Episode 7, The Financial Model. Episode 8, The ESIA. Episode 9, The Offtake Agreement. Episode 10, The EPC Contract. Episode 11, The DFI Engagement Strategy. Episode 12, The SPV and Legal Structure. Every episode in this series has been building toward this one. Financial close is the moment the DFI commits its capital, the sponsor commits its equity, and the EPC contractor receives the notice to proceed. It is the moment infrastructure stops being a proposal and becomes a project. Episode 13 shows you what happens in the final weeks before signing. What occurs on the day of close, how construction is financed and monitored through to completion, and what the DFI expects from the project for the next 15 to 25 years.
Zara, I want to acknowledge something at the start of this episode. We have been through 6 detailed episodes of project preparation, and I think the lesson that runs through all of them is this. By the time you reach financial close, none of the work should be a surprise. The developer who followed the process, built the model correctly, completed the ESIA, negotiated the offtake, structured the EPC, engaged the DFI early, and designed the legal structure for enforceability, should reach financial close with confidence, not anxiety.
That is the purpose of the entire framework. The developer who arrives at financial close with outstanding legal opinions, unperfected security, and equity not yet deposited did not fail at close. They failed in the 6 months before close by not treating the closing checklist as the primary project management document from the day the term sheet was signed. Financial close is a delivery event, not a negotiation event. The negotiations happen during due diligence and term sheet. Financial close is about executing what was agreed. Let us walk through exactly how that execution works. Financial close has a precise legal definition. It is the moment when all conditions precedent in the loan agreement are satisfied, all transaction documents are executed, and the facility is available for drawdown. From a legal perspective, financial close creates binding obligations on both the DFI and the borrower. The DFI is committed to lend, and the borrower is committed to borrow. From a commercial perspective, financial close means the EPC contractor can receive the notice to proceed, the instruction to mobilize to site, and begin construction. From an equity perspective, it means the sponsor's equity is committed and typically already deposited in the project escrow account.
The risk profile of the transaction changes fundamentally at financial close. Before close, the developer bears the project development risk. The risk that the transaction does not close, that the DFI does not commit, that the offtake counterparty withdraws. After close, the construction risk is borne by the project structure. The EPC contractor bears cost and schedule risk for the contracted scope. The DFI monitors through the independent engineer, and the developer's job shifts from project development to project oversight.
There is one commercial consequence of financial close that many developers underestimate: the commitment fee clock. From the day of signing, the developer is paying a commitment fee on every undrawn dollar of the DFI loan, typically 0.25 to 0.75% per annum. If the construction program draws down over 24 months, the developer is paying commitment fees for 24 months on the average undrawn balance. For a $100 million loan drawn evenly over 2 years, that is a meaningful cost. The developer who understands this will optimize the drawdown schedule with the EPC contractor to draw efficiently, not to hold back funds unnecessarily. The final 8 weeks before financial close are the most execution-intensive period in the entire project development process. In weeks 8 to 6 before signing, all final versions of project agreements are circulated for execution review, and legal counsel receives instructions to commence drafting legal opinions. Legal opinions take 4 to 8 weeks to produce. The developer who issues legal opinion instructions in week 2 before signing will not have opinions ready for close. The developer who issued them in week 8 should receive first drafts by week 4, allowing 2 weeks for review, negotiation, and finalization.
In weeks 6 to 4, the security perfection filings are lodged, share pledge registration at the company registrar. land mortgage registration at the land registry, account charges created at the account bank. Each of these registrations has a processing timeline that cannot be compressed by paying a higher fee or making more phone calls. The registry processes at the speed the registry processes. A developer who knows this will have lodged the filings in week 6, not in week 2.
In weeks 4 to 2, corporate authorizations, board resolutions, and shareholder approvals for every transaction document are obtained from every party. This sounds simple. It is not. Directors may be in multiple jurisdictions. Shareholders may have their own approval processes. A board resolution from a Mauritius holding company requires directors to sign in the right capacity, with the right authority, witnessed correctly. A missing notarization or apostille discovered in week 1 causes a delay that could have been prevented in week 4. The signing ceremony itself should have no surprises. If there are surprises at signing, the preparation process failed. The signing ceremony is the execution of all transaction documents in their final, agreed form. The primary document is the loan agreement, signed first, as it governs all other documents. The security documents follow: the share pledge, the asset mortgage, and the account charge. Then the direct agreements, tripartite documents between the DFI, the SPV, and each key counterparty. Then the intercreditor agreement in multi-lender transactions. Then the accounts agreement establishing the waterfall account structure. Each document is executed by the authorized signatories of each party. Legal counsel typically coordinates the execution process with a signing memorandum, a checklist of every document, every signatory, and every certified copy required.
The final document signed, or co-signed, at financial close is the financial close certificate. This certificate, typically executed by the independent engineer and DFI legal counsel jointly, confirms in writing that all conditions precedent have been satisfied, all documents have been executed, and the facility is available for drawdown. This is the document that releases the DFI's first disbursement obligation. Without it, the DFI will not disburse, even if every other document has been signed.
Simultaneously, with or immediately after the signing ceremony, the SPV issues the notice to proceed to the EPC contractor. The notice to proceed is the EPC contractor's instruction to mobilize to site and begin construction. The EPC contract will specify the form and delivery method of the NTP, and the contractor's construction program clock starts running from the date of NTP. A delay in issuing NTP after financial close, because the NTP template has not been prepared, because the counterparty signatory is unavailable, or because a final agreed issue in the EPC contract has not been resolved, is a delay that directly compresses the construction program before the first shovel has been lifted. The first drawdown under the DFI loan is a separate and distinct event from financial close. Financial close establishes the DFI's commitment to lend. The first drawdown is the first actual disbursement of funds. The key structural requirement is equity first. The sponsor's equity commitment must be fully drawn or fully deposited before the DFI disburses a single dollar of debt. This requirement prevents the DFI from being the first money into the project and from carrying 100% of the downside if the sponsor subsequently fails to inject equity. The equity first requirement is non-negotiable in every DFI transaction.
The drawdown request, also called a utilization request, is a formal document submitted by the SPV to the DFI, typically 5 business days before the proposed drawdown date. It states the amount requested, the proposed drawdown date, the proposed use of proceeds, and a warranty that no event of default is continuing. In a multi-lender transaction, each lender receives its own drawdown request, and each disburses its proportionate share simultaneously into the construction disbursement account. The interest during construction, the IDC, accrues from the first drawdown date and is capitalized into the outstanding loan balance rather than paid in cash during the construction period.
Construction disbursements follow a monthly cycle. The EPC contractor submits a payment application at the end of each month certifying the value of work completed against the construction program. The independent engineer reviews the payment application, inspects the site, or reviews submitted evidence, and issues a payment certificate confirming the amount due. The SPV cannot pay the EPC contractor without the IE payment certificate, and the DFI will not disperse without it. This three-party process, EPC contractor, i.e. DFI, is designed to prevent disbursement for work that has not been completed.
The SPV submits a drawdown request to the DFI attaching the IE payment certificate. The DFI confirms no event of default, no material adverse change, and that the IE certificate is attached. It then disperses to the construction disbursement account. The SPV must pay the EPC contractor within the contractually agreed payment period, typically 14 to 28 days from the IE payment certificate. Late payment by the SPV to the EPC contractor is a breach of the EPC contract that can entitle the contractor to suspend work and claim interest. The payment cycle must be tracked as a project management deliverable, not as an administrative function.
Monthly construction reporting is a DFI covenant requirement, not a courtesy. The SPV must submit a monthly construction report covering physical progress against program, budget spend against the construction cost schedule, schedule variance analysis, major risks and their mitigation, any contractor claims or disputes, and health, safety, and environmental incidents on site. DFIs read these reports. A report that consistently understates schedule risk or financial variance and is later contradicted by reality damages the developer's credibility with the DFI for the remainder of the loan term. Report accurately. Flag problems early. DFIs respond better to early disclosure than to a surprise at the 12-month review. The independent engineer's role during construction is more than payment certification. The IE is the DFI's eyes and ears on the project. Monthly site visits verify that physical progress matches the reported program. Design reviews confirm that the EPC contractor's shop drawings and engineering submissions comply with the contracted specification and performance standards. Variation order assessments confirm that change orders are within the agreed scope boundary and that the contractor's pricing is reasonable. Each of these functions is part of the IE's duty of care to the DFI, and the SPV must cooperate with the IE's exercise of that duty unconditionally.
The cooperation obligation is a covenant in the loan agreement. An SPV that restricts the IE's access to site, delays providing construction documents for review, or instructs the EPC contractor not to share information with the IE is in breach of the loan agreement, not just causing inconvenience. DFIs take obstruction of the IE extremely seriously because the IE's reports are the primary evidence base for the DFI's disbursement decisions. If the IE cannot verify progress, the DFI cannot disburse. An SPV that obstructs its own funding process is a management problem that no amount of project quality compensation can fix.
The construction milestone schedule is the project's heartbeat. For a typical 24-month infrastructure construction program, the major milestones are financial close and NTP in month 0, site mobilization in month 1, civil works commenced by month 3, major equipment ordered by month 4, civil works substantially complete by months 8 to 10, major equipment delivered to site by months 10 to 12, mechanical completion by months 16 to 20, commissioning commenced by months 20 to 22, and PAC and COD achieved by months 22 to 24. The long stop date, the contractual deadline for COD, is typically set at 24 to 30 months from NTP.
The float in the construction program, the difference between the programmed COD and the long stop date, is the contractor's risk buffer. If the contractor has no float, every delay event immediately threatens the long stop date, immediately implicates the DFI's financing terms, and immediately raises the question of whether the long stop date can be met. A construction program with zero float is a construction program that will go into extension at the first weather event. The IE will flag a program with inadequate float in the technical due diligence report. The DFI will require the EPC contractor to demonstrate how float has been built into the program before financial close.
3 types of events during construction require specific management. The first is cost overrun. The DFI loan is sized to cover the agreed construction cost plus contingency. Cost overruns beyond the contingency are a sponsor obligation. The developer must inject additional equity to cover the shortfall. This is why the cost overrun facility, a committed equity line above the base equity commitment, is often a DFI condition. A developer who has no mechanism to cover a cost overrun beyond contingency will ask the DFI to increase the loan. The DFI will decline. The construction will stop. This is a default event. The cost overrun facility prevents this.
The second event type is construction delay. When the construction program slips relative to the baseline, the IE assesses the cause and categorizes it. Contractor default, which triggers LD liability. Excusable delay such as force majeure, which extends the construction program without LD liability. Or developer or owner-caused delay, which may entitle the contractor to additional time and cost. The DFI is notified when the scheduled delay exceeds 30 days relative to the programmed COD. A delay that threatens the long stop date triggers a detailed DFI review, and potentially a requirement for an updated construction program and recovery plan from the contractor.
The third event type is an insurance claim. If a significant construction incident occurs, structural failure, fire, equipment damage, the sequence is immediate notification to insurer, IE, and DFI simultaneously. IE assessment of damage scope. Insurer appointment of loss adjuster. DFI review and approval of reinstatement plan. Repair commences. Insurance proceeds are paid to the DFI as loss payee, not to the SPV or the contractor. The DFI releases proceeds to the construction disbursement account for reinstatement costs after reviewing the IE's assessment and approving the reinstatement program. The developer who expects to manage an insurance claim unilaterally and present the DFI with the bill after the fact has misread the loan agreement. Practical completion, or provisional acceptance, is the most commercially significant event in the construction period. When the EPC contractor believes it has achieved practical completion, it notifies the SPV and the IE. The IE arranges performance tests, output test, availability test, and efficiency test against the contractual performance guarantees. If the project passes all 3 tests, the IE issues the provisional acceptance certificate. 3 things happen simultaneously. Delay liquidated damages stop accruing. Commercial operations date is declared under the offtake agreement, and revenue payments from the offtaker commence.
The COD declaration triggers the revenue waterfall for the first time. Offtaker payments flow into the revenue account. The first month's debt service reserve account funding is made. The first operating cost payments are processed, and 6 months after COD, the first debt service payment, principal plus interest, is due. The model the developer built in Episode 7 has a date when this first debt service payment occurs. The actual project now has that same date as a hard contractual obligation. The DSCR calculated from that first payment onward is what the DFI monitors for the life of the loan.
The final acceptance certificate is issued by the IE 6 to 12 months after PAC, following a defects liability period during which the EPC contractor must remedy all notified defects at its own cost. FAC marks the end of the EPC contractor's primary contractual obligations. The construction performance bond, typically 10% of the EPC contract value, expires at FAC, releasing the bond issuer's liability. The EPC retention, typically 5% of contract value, is released to the contractor. The final account is agreed, resolving all outstanding claims between the SPV and the contractor, and the project formally transitions from construction to operations under the O&M agreement.
The FAC milestone is sometimes treated as administrative, but it has direct financial consequences. The performance bond release means the DFI loses a significant credit support instrument. If there are any outstanding performance deficiencies that the contractor has not yet remedied, FAC must not be issued until they are resolved, because issuing FAC prematurely releases the contractor from its obligation to remedy them. The IE's role in FAC assessment is identical to its role in PAC: independent verification, documented assessment, formal certificate. The developer who pressures the IE to issue FAC prematurely to release the contractor's bond and retention, because the contractor wants the money, is making a decision that reduces the project's long-term credit quality.
The transition from construction to operations is a planned process, not an automatic handover. The O&M operator should have mobilized, placed key personnel on site, and established operating procedures before PAC. An O&M operator who begins mobilizing only after PAC is declared will not be ready to operate the project from day one of commercial operations. The first month of operations is the highest risk operational period. Equipment is new, procedures are being tested, and the team is learning the project's specific characteristics. O&M operators who have operated comparable facilities in the same sector will typically identify and resolve teething issues faster than operators encountering the technology for the first time.
The DSRA must be funded to the required level from the first revenue receipts. If revenue in the first operating months is below the base case, for example, because the ramp-up period for demand is slower than projected, the DSRA may not fund to the required level within the DFI's expected timeline. A DSRA shortfall is a potential covenant breach. The developer who anticipated the ramp-up risk and sized the DSRA contribution schedule accordingly will avoid this. The developer who assumed immediate full capacity operations from month 1 may face an early covenant discussion with the DFI.
DFI monitoring through the operations period is systematic and structured. The quarterly management accounts covenant is a hard obligation. Accounts must be delivered within 45 days of each quarter end. The annual audited accounts must be delivered within 120 days of the financial year end. The DSCR and LLCR covenant test results are typically submitted semi-annually with the management accounts. If the DSCR falls below the threshold, even by a small margin, the DFI must be notified immediately. The cure period in the loan agreement gives the developer time to address the shortfall, but the clock starts from the moment the breach occurs, not from when the DFI discovers it.
Annual site visits by the DFI with the IE are standard. The DFI's monitoring team visits the project, reviews the IE's annual operations report, meets with the O&M operator, and reviews financial performance. These visits are not adversarial. They are the DFI's mechanism for maintaining a current understanding of the project's performance and for identifying issues before they become problems. A developer who prepares for the annual visit, produces a thorough self-assessment, engages with the monitoring team's questions transparently, and follows up on any action items promptly, builds the institutional relationship that matters most when the project faces a genuine difficulty.
Financial covenant testing is the formal assessment of whether the project is meeting its DFI agreed financial performance thresholds. The DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, is the most critical and most frequently tested. DSCR below 1.3 times at the base case triggers a cure period. DSCR below 1.1 times triggers a potential event of default. DSCR below 1.0 times means the project cannot service its debt from operating cash flows, which is a serious default event. The developer who built a model with tight base case DSCR 1.32, 1.35 has very little cushion against real-world variance. The model cushion must be calibrated against the variance expected in actual operations.
The distribution test is the covenant that most directly affects when sponsors receive returns. The test requires DSCR for the preceding 12 months at or above the distribution threshold, typically 1.2 times. No event of default continuing. The DSRA funded to the required balance, and no material adverse change. All 4 conditions must be satisfied simultaneously. A developer who has a strong project but a persistent DSRA shortfall due to early ramp-up issues will not be able to make distributions until the DSRA is funded. The model projected distributions in year 3. The actual distributions may be delayed to year 4. This is not a failure. It is the mechanism working as designed.
7 financial close mistakes consistently delay signing or cause first drawdown to fail. Mistake 1. Legal opinions commissioned too late. If counsel receives instructions fewer than 6 weeks before signing, opinions will not be ready. The close date slips. Mistake 2. Security filings not yet registered. A share pledge filed but not yet confirmed by the company registrar is not perfected. The DFI cannot draw until registration is confirmed. Mistake 3. A missing corporate authorization. One board resolution or shareholder approval omitted from the closing checklist, discovered on signing day. The document must be re-executed, notarized, and potentially apostilled. This takes days to weeks.
Mistake 4. The ESIA 120-day disclosure clock has not completed. This deadline is absolute. No waiver is available. The DFI will not disperse before the 120-day period ends, regardless of how good the project is. Mistake 5. Equity not yet deposited. The sponsor's equity must be in the project escrow account on signing day. A sponsor who intends to fund equity from a subsidiary company's operating cash flow in the weeks following signing will find that the DFI will not release a drawdown request until the equity is confirmed. Mistake 6. A counterparty CP default. The off-taker has failed to maintain its operating license, or the EPC contractor's performance bond has expired before being renewed. And mistake 7. The DFI has not yet been noted as loss payee on the insurance policies. Insurer processing backlogs can cause a 1 to 2 week delay that no one anticipated.
At financial close, sector-specific CPs create the most common source of last-minute surprises. In energy transactions, the generation license is the most frequent delay. Generation licenses are issued by energy regulators who operate on their own timelines. A regulatory body that issues a license in 60 days on average will sometimes take 90. The DFI cannot close without the license. The developer cannot accelerate the regulator. The developer who applied for the license 12 months before target close has a 30-day buffer. The developer who applied 6 months before has no buffer.
In water transactions, the Resettlement Action Plan Completion Certificate is often the last CP to be satisfied. The RAP CP requires evidence that all resettlement has been completed, land acquired, replacement land provided, livelihoods restored, and community grievances resolved. In practice, there are often a small number of households whose situations have not been fully resolved by the target close date. The DFI will not issue a waiver on this CP. The developer who has been managing the RAP process as a financial close critical path item, not as a community relations activity, will have resolved these situations before the final week. The developer who has been treating the RAP as a compliance activity will be closing their financial model with an open CP on the day the DFI expects to sign.
African Infrastructure Building, Corporate Ltd, AIB Corp Ltd, is a specialist project development and advisory firm. Our team has been through financial close on African infrastructure transactions, and we understand what it costs when the process is managed without discipline. We have seen the 3-week delay because legal opinions were commissioned late. We have seen the 6-week extension because security registrations were not tracked. We have seen the post-close construction surprises because the monthly IE reporting was treated as administrative rather than as a project management tool. Our advisory work is designed to prevent these outcomes, not to respond to them.
This is the value of transaction experience. Not just knowing what the documents say, knowing what goes wrong in practice, and building the process discipline that prevents it. That is the difference between a developer who closes in month 24 and one who closes in month 30.
AIB Corp Ltd provides 4 financial close and construction advisory services. First, financial close management, CP tracking, closing checklist management, document execution coordination, and first drawdown instruction management. We own the closing checklist from term sheet to first draw. Second, construction monitoring, monthly IE coordination, draw request review, schedule monitoring, and variation order management. Third, completion management, PAC and COD process preparation, performance test documentation, FAC tracking, and O&M handover coordination. And fourth, operations period support, DFI reporting, covenant compliance calculation, distribution test preparation, and annual monitoring visit preparation.
Zara, the thing that stands out to me most in this episode is the idea that financial close is a delivery event, not a negotiation event. By the time you reach close, everything should be agreed. Close is about executing what was agreed, and executing it in the right sequence, with the right people, with the right authorizations, by the right deadline.
And the corollary is that any negotiation that is still happening in the final 2 weeks before close is a sign that something in the preparation process was not completed on time. The developer who is still negotiating EPC contractual terms in week 2 before signing will have a distracted legal team, a frustrated DFI, and an EPC contractor who may use the late negotiation as an opportunity to reopen pricing. Every unresolved issue at close has costs that compound.
The operations period monitoring section was also clarifying. I think developers sometimes imagine that once construction is complete, the DFI relationship becomes passive. But the DFI relationship continues for 15 to 25 years. Every quarter, every annual review, every covenant test, every site visit. The developer who builds a good relationship during development and close will find that the DFI is a constructive partner when operational challenges arise.
And the developer who treats the DFI as an obstacle to be managed during development, who provides the minimum required information, who delays responses to DD queries, who tries to close with undisclosed liabilities, will find that the DFI's institutional memory is very long. DFIs share information across their monitoring teams. A transaction flagged for management quality issues in year 1 will receive a higher intensity of monitoring in years 2 through 20. Build the relationship correctly from the start. That is Episode 13, Financial Close. The final steps for African infrastructure. The closing timeline, 8 weeks of disciplined execution. The signing ceremony, 7 documents in the right sequence. First drawdown, equity first, IE certified, pro rata. Construction monitoring, monthly draw requests, IE certification, monthly reporting. Construction milestones from NTP to COD, PAC, COD, FAEE, their legal and commercial consequences. Transition to operations and the DSRA funding timeline. DFI monitoring through operations, quarterly accounts, covenant testing, annual site visits, and 7 financial close mistakes that delay signing or cause first drawdown to fail. If you found this episode valuable, subscribe to the channel. AIB Corp Ltd publishes a new episode every week on building bankable African infrastructure projects.
Share this episode with developers who are in the final stages of project development and approaching financial close. The 7 mistakes in this episode are all preventable, but only if the developer knows about them before they happen.
If you are managing a financial close process, tracking CPs, coordinating legal counsel, managing the signing ceremony, or monitoring construction disbursements, AIB Corp Ltd can support you. Financial close management, construction monitoring, completion management, and operations period support. All on a retainer and success fee basis aligned to African project budgets.
Visit www.aibcorpltd.com or contact the team at projects@afroglobaltrade.com. Initial consultation is confidential.
Episode 14 covers project operations and DFI monitoring. The long game, O&M management, performance monitoring, covenant compliance through the operating period, refinancing strategies, and sponsor exit. If you have built the project, reached financial close, and completed construction, Episode 14 shows you how to manage the investment for the 15 to 25 years of the DFI loan life.
The long game, and the one that determines whether the project delivers the returns the sponsor projected in Episode 7's financial model.
Subscribe, leave a comment with your question or the specific challenge you are facing at financial close, and share the channel with one African infrastructure developer who needs to understand this process before they start it.
AIB Corp Ltd, African Infrastructure Building Corporate Limited. See you in Episode 14.
www.abcorpltd.com.
Financial close, the beginning of the accountability phase.
Episode 14, The Long Game.